Hi, this is Dr. Rick Carter McClure for another 7-minute therapy episode. And this channel is dedicated to men, for men, and about men. So today's topic is going to be about critical thinking skills. A lot of you have been talking to me about your heightened anxiety over the pandemic, which I know is a concern for pretty much most Americans. So let's talk about critical thinking skills, because that comes up a lot when we're discussing this in therapy. And in the world now with the media, basically scaring us to death all the time with every variant and masking, not masking, new vaccinations, etc., and so on. We really have to be able to do our own research and make our own decisions. We just can't afford to be, lazy, for a lack of a better word, to just listen to one outlet or take one person or one authority or one expert or one person who's of science, their advice as to everything we should do. So it's important as a person to be able to just go through a number of resources and not go to your usual source, to give it a lot of thought and figure out how are you going to live your life with the COVID variant, or not even COVID variant, COVID, which is evidently endemic and here for a while. So if you think about critical thinking, it's a skill we've really had since childhood. If you think about kids, they're so smart and witty and they ask obvious questions, which we think are so brilliant, but they're pretty much common sense. Think of kids when they start to recognize that maybe Santa Claus doesn't exist. What do they start asking? How does Santa Claus get all around the whole world to billions of people and have the time to go down every chimney and deliver toys? So when you start to question things and you're not just blindly taking information based on your political affiliation or the tribe of friends you hang out with or agreeing with your family members, and you become an individual that honestly thinks for him or herself at some point, you just take the information you see, and if it doesn't add up, why don't you just question it? Okay, if this makes sense, but yet this doesn't make sense, what do I believe? Okay, if this was true here, then that would make this true here, but that's not what I'm hearing. That kind of thing. So if you're having to do a lot of cognitive dissonance to make something land as truth, it's probably not truthful. And if you're constantly in the state of fear, you're probably not listening to something that's true. Because if you think about truth, it tends to land in a calm type of way. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily good news or bad news. It's just truth, and it settles in you. And when we're in reality, we're able to deal with it in a more calm way. So what I don't when people are shouting and screaming and throwing tantrums and yelling and going, blah, 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 I don't believe you, I don't want to hear it. That's when I tend to know that, okay, that's not truth. Because if you speak truth, there's no need to be yelling and screaming and calling people names and shouting at them and declaring that they are racist or homophobic or whatever you want to call it. You don't need to do that if you're just trying to stand behind truth. And with critical thinking skills, we should be able to, as adults by now, just calm down and talk about something in an open-minded way to learn more. So, and this happens in relationships too, and it's interesting that what happens in a relationship can be taken out further and further into, communities, families, communities, society, cultures, etc. And if you just stop long enough to really hear the other person and try to understand why they believe a certain thing, and you can suspend your own beliefs for a moment so that you're not biased, which is a difficult task, by the way, then are they saying any information that honestly makes sense to you? And you can respond in, again, a calm, respectful way. And together, I think we can kind of discern what is a greater truth. Like, if something doesn't make sense and someone is explaining it to me and all of a sudden it makes sense, I'm all for believing it. Like, why wouldn't I? That doesn't make sense to not. So if two people can sit down and really hear each other with the intention of hearing each other, we can solve so many more problems and get to greater truths, and also figure out where something doesn't make sense and where we have to change our mind about something. So with critical thinking, in a time where there's, an abundance and copious information everywhere, and it's so polarized, unfortunately, it really doesn't matter your political affiliation. Critical thinking skills stand on their own. It's the ability to rationally and ethically and honestly evaluate something based on what makes sense to you when you take in enough information to be able to make an educated choice. And oftentimes, all you have to do is employ your intuition and basically see with your own eyes something isn't true. Like, you just feel it. You can, you've been around people when they're saying something and inside you're going, okay, they're lying. So it doesn't make sense anymore at this point for all of us to be just joining another group or like being loyal to family members or parties or whatever, just so that we can be in. Instead, why don't we be respectful of one another, allow ourselves to talk openly about things so that we can reunite in a couple, in our families and communities, in our culture, in our country, in the world. And I know that's a huge task. But anyway, that was my comment on this, because I know a lot of you are experiencing amazing amounts of anxiety. And understandably, because every time you turn on the news or look at social media, you would think, we have like an asteroid is coming to hit America pretty soon, or the world. All right, that's all I have today. Bye.